I think we're live. Mahalia, you're on mute.
Mahalia, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mahalia. Welcome to another episode of Happy Hour. And we are being hosted by the university itself for this entrepreneurship space. So the topic tonight is finding opportunity in the time of crisis. And I think this is an important conversation, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, as we have been experiencing a lot of challenges throughout the lockdown, and being able to sustain our businesses has been quite a difficult journey for all of us. But some have managed to find opportunities within the crisis. So today we have two amazing guests who are entrepreneurs, and they're going to be sharing their stories with us. So I hope you guys enjoy the show tonight. And please do not forget to ask any questions or drop us a comment, and let's always interact. So without further ado, I'm going to give the gentlemen the platform to introduce themselves. And we will start with Zandisile, who can just provide us with himself. What does he do? Where he comes from? And yes, get into the topic. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity. I'd like to greet all our listeners. Very good evening to you all. I am Zandisile Mkhubugeli, born in Port Elizabeth, relocated to Cape Town at the age of 5, went to Imperial Primary School, matriculated at Gardens Commercial High School. I studied an BTech in entrepreneurship. I passed it cum laude. I did an MBA after that. I'm currently doing a PhD at the GSB in Cape Town. I'm a lecturer by profession, but I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've founded several companies. Some have failed and some are still operating. I'm a CEO of Moving Chronicles, and I'm a CEO of Trinog Pty Ltd. Moving Chronicles is a transport and logistics company. We partnered with several manufacturers, and Trinog is a business incubation agency which aims to take operational companies onto the digital platform. Without further ado, thank you so much. I'll hand over to Monet.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Zandi. It's always quite a difficult thing to do, to speak after such greatness, and it's quite
true.
It's quite exciting for me to sit here and share some information. I mean, I am a young man all the way from Venda, in Limpopo, and my academic journey has been quite interesting. Growing up in the villages, finding my way to the city, getting to Medunsa, studying a degree in Bachelor of Science, getting excluded in the journey. I had spent too many years in the university, and they felt I needed to go. And I think that's where I reinvented myself, and that's where I found who I am and what I need to do. And I founded a couple of businesses, and the two businesses that I'm currently running actually came from my academic exclusion. And I'm quite excited that we're having this conversation with students and young people who are actually in varsity right now, to say sometimes you will fail in life, but the failure can actually be an opportunity, because I took the situation that I found myself in and transformed it into a business idea. And this is many years ago, about 7-8 years ago. I started my first business called Careers Building Blocks. And the whole idea was to say, I don't want to see another child who is within my vicinity going through the same challenges, because I think majority of the reasons why I was failing and ending up being excluded were due to the fact that I didn't know who I am. So Careers Building Blocks became a mission to say, how do I start a business that would actually target students who are struggling in university? And before they get to the university, how do you guide them to actually choose the right careers? And 6 years later, I'm developing technologies for career guidance, entrepreneurial development, and many more things, Yeah, that's me.
Thank you for that intro and hearing your journey, Monet. It's very interesting because sometimes it's important to look at the challenges we experience and turning them to an opportunity. And it's a great intro because then it boils down to the topic for today. So thank you for sharing your story. And Zanisile, thank you for also sharing that intro. Both of you gentlemen have done a lot, and this is why we need your expertise tonight. And hopefully that the everyone watching will be able to ask a lot of questions. Because if I was at home watching, I'd take this opportunity to ask how to navigate the space of entrepreneurship, also in my career development. It's very important. So like I mentioned earlier that we are focusing, or the topic tonight is finding opportunities in the times of crisis. And a lot of challenges have happened the past year in 2020. And the lockdown has shook all of us, financially, mentally, psychologically, and it forced us to innovate, to come up with different ideas in doing the norm or how we know life itself. So I want us to focus on maybe starting off with the lockdown when it started. What opportunities did you guys come up with, or what strategies did you guys come up with to ensuring that you're going to sustain your business despite the lockdown that happened last year? So maybe we can start there. And the question can be answered by either of you guys.
Doc, do you want to go first?
Okay. Basically, they say in every crisis lies an opportunity beneath it, And one of the biggest problems is a lot of people tend to focus on the negative aspect of the problem and not digging down to find the cracks or to find the solution underneath the problem. So, and also it has a lot to do with your mindset, more than it has to do with your skill. So for instance, when the level 5 was introduced, it was last year around March or May, it kind of put a halt in a lot of people's operation. And it gave us or me an opportunity to look at the situation and ask, how can I improve myself? How can I improve the business? And it gave me an opportunity to start an online agency, an incubation, because I noticed that, there has to be a company that's going to bridge the gap. For instance, a lot of people were not technologically inclined. They were still operating backwards in a sense. And then I met up with a partner of mine, Thomas Ferreira, and we said, you know what, let's start an incubation company, where we can help people who are operating in a traditional space in terms of brick and mortar and trying to bring them into the digital platform. Because first of all, they can't be traveling, it's locked down, they can't go anywhere. So they need technology, they need a platform where they can source or procure goods online. So we came up with a company called Trynoc, where we create e-commerce websites, in a way of bridging the gap to help people continue with their everyday life, in spite of the crisis. So I'd say dealing with the crisis, don't spend too much time focusing on the problem, rather ask yourself, what's the opportunity in the problem? So once you ask yourself that question and change your mindset to see it, a lot of things will prevail, So you just got to look at the opportunity and don't focus on the problem. I think I'm not sure if I've done enough justice to answer the question.
No, you did. And I'm going to come back to ask you a question, but I would like to hear from Monet, and how did he find opportunity within the crisis of lockdown last year?
Sure. Like I said, it's always quite fun to come off the dog, but, with me, it became a question of what is the scarcity right now that COVID has brought, right? I found myself falling in love with the academia during lockdown, because it has always been, what is the transformation that we need to do, right? What are the scarcities that COVID is bringing? And I'm a big fan of The Lion King, and I'll take you a bit into a journey as to how did I diversify, as an individual. And what happened is I met a couple of gentlemen who really transformed me, as an individual, as a business person. And the first gentleman was Ntate Vuyojek, right? And this guy runs a company called RBB's, reality-based business. And he introduced me to a concept that really changed my journey as an entrepreneur, to say, if you look at The Lion King as a movie, it's a narrative, right? We had a narrative that is really controlled how business operates from the Eurocentric approach, which is the animal farm. And that particular methodology really creates scarcity to some people, because if you remember the book Animal Farm, it speaks about not all animals are equal, right?
Correct.
And then from an African perspective, we needed to look at a different way of saying, in Africa, we are already behind in terms of your first, second, third industrial revolution and business-wise. How do we catch up? It's by creating a narrative that speaks to Africans for Africans. And The Lion King becomes a perfect narrative to say, we need to find Simbas in business who are going to transform scarcity to abundance. Because if you look at where we are in the world, in the globe, there's a lot of scarcity in our communities. And when COVID came, it needed to shake people up. It needed to shake young entrepreneurs up to say, there is scarcity that needs to be addressed, right? It's either it's economic, it's educational, whatever scarcity that's there. I mean, if now you look at students, you speak about fees must fall. It's a scarcity that students are dealing with right now, and their abundance is sort of free education, right? But somebody needs to innovate. Somebody needs to come up with ideas of how do we then create self-funding entrepreneurs. And that's how, under COVID, I found opportunities to say, getting involved in entrepreneurship. For instance, if Dr. Zandi is coming up with an incubator, from a psychometric point of view, how do we help these entrepreneurs first learn about who they are, what they're good at, where they are in the journey? Because, I mean, we have so many students who are in the education system right now, right? And they're looking for jobs, opportunities in the form of jobs. But why don't we train these young people to say, don't wait for private sector and government to create jobs. Be the one who leaves the system and create jobs. Deal with the scarcity of youth unemployment by looking at what is the pain that clients are facing right now, right? And you look at your education, which has set the foundation of what you are good at and who you are, right? And you transform that into a mechanism or a master plan of addressing scarcity to abundance. And I mean, that's the concept I applied. And I found myself working with a couple of big organizations during COVID. And then, look, I was doing it as a side hustler. I was not fully an entrepreneur. I was side hustling. There is scarcity. You've got salary pay cards. You need to make end meet. And I started working with organizations like Kulisa Social Solutions, who are trying to solve social solutions. And I'm in that space. How do I contribute, to society and plug some of the gaps that we have in community while I make my money? It's all about changing the narrative and looking at the problem and say, what abundance can I create for others and for myself?
So many stories. I like that. The metaphor you use of the Lion King, I never thought of that, but it's so important to be able to come back to the basics of just addressing the narrative of Africans and how do we create that opportunity for ourselves? How do we use the resources that we have, whether it's our own skills or looking at our community and saying that this is the opportunity that is there. How can I use that? And I liked also what Dr. Zandi said. I'll call you Dr. I'll address you as Dr. Zandi. I think it's important. Dr. Zandi mentioned also having a good mindset, because as an entrepreneur, you need that. Sometimes it's not easy to be able to say that I'm going to start a business, especially when you don't know where you're going to start. But when you know the value that you have to offer and being able to sustain that business, it's easy for you to be able to take that opportunity and make it something big and great for you. And both gentlemen, you have addressed this, which I think is important in how you both solved the crisis that you encountered during the lockdown. I mean, looking at the incubation that you mentioned, starting an e-commerce online, and it's great because you look at this and you're like, sometimes when you're experiencing difficulties, you don't even think about changing your mindset. So I think that is such a profound way to look at things. Thank you for both sharing on that. But when coming back to understanding also, how did having to start both these businesses from both of you gentlemen, how did your business respond to these challenges of the lockdown? Maybe we should also then focus on that. How did the challenges come about? How did you handle the challenges? And then rising then to the opportunities for the business to grow. So either of you guys can start answering the question, since you both then created these different platforms in your businesses. So how did you guys just respond? How did the business respond to the changes?
Right. Can I go, Doc?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mahalia, to be honest, in a time of crisis, in a time of scarcity, there's a bit of innovation that you need, and the mindset is very important. I think the fancy term for it is called an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So I needed to switch on that mindset, right? And say, how do I innovate my business model, right? Moving away from having a vision, a business vision, to an MTP. And what an MTP is, it's massive transformative purpose, right? While I'm diversifying my business, what impact am I going to have on the lives of others and to my business as well, right? I needed to re-innovate the business model from being selling to people who need to pay me on a daily, right? So I go and I look for clients and they pay me, and then that's it. And I needed to find a model which is innovative and which is sustainable, right? And I think many businesses are doing that right now in response to COVID. And I mean, I'm sure some of the comments in the chat from the learners would be the funding problem. You know, how do you get funding under a time of crisis? And I think sometimes we are getting entangled in the idea of getting funding and not innovating. And the concept of wanting to be funded to start an idea, it becomes dangerous in many aspects, that you will get demotivated because not a lot of people are just willing to give money to an idea. People want to give money to a product, right? Show me a product, show me the viability, and also show me that you've got balance sheet affluence, right? So I won't give you my money and then you waste it. And at that time, for my business to really cope and to survive and actually to transform, I looked at, like, it goes back to the scarcity. What problems were presented by COVID, right? And what are the problems that are going to be temporary? What are the problems that are going to be long-term? And if you think about it, the one big problem that's going to be with us for a long time was youth unemployment, right? It was definitely going to increase, and it was going to be there. It's still there, and it's going to be there for a long time. And then I decided, how do I plug into that problem and solve the bits that I can handle? And that's how I re-innovated my model. And from that business model innovation, I mean, gladly, I've partnered with Tshwane University of Technology in their incubation program, right? On how do we identify entrepreneurs and how do we train entrepreneurs. And I mean, all thanks to also collaborating with other people. You know, I started collaborating a lot with people, and I mean, I can guarantee you I'm going to collaborate with Doc here soon, very soon. Watch the space.
Yes,
and it's
definitely.
also about being able to use your attention capital to actually stimulate your own growth, right? Don't wait for people to give you their attention. Create attention and get people to believe in the ideas that you want to implement and show people product. So it means there is the mindset, there is addressing the scarcity that the crisis has presented, as well as collaborating with other people. Collaboration is important. Funding won't come while you're sitting behind your computer, sitting at home, farming, and you are not talking to people. You need to collaborate, and opportunities will come.
Wow. I like that. I think the last point that you made really drew my attention, the attention capital. How do you attract that attention capital? I like the fact that you also raised that funding will sometimes discourage you if you don't receive it. So creating that collaboration is important, and the attention capital. I'm learning as an entrepreneur. I'm taking my notes. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dr. Zandi, would you like to share how your business responded to the changes of the lockdown?
Absolutely. First of all, saying that says you need to adapt to die, and if you can't adapt, and then you're gonna die. That's a given.
Yeah.
So what happened is during the lockdown, a lot of people decided to downsize, downscale. But on the other hand, we decided to diversify and expand because of the opportunity that presented itself. I think one of the best things that I was grateful for was, when I started the transport and logistics company, Moving Chronicles, we were debt free, so it really put us in a very it put us in a great position from a financial point of view, because they want obligations to fulfill, so we had an opportunity to actually sit down and ask ourselves where to from here, so which was why we decided to create a subsidiary, Trinoc. Trinoc is a subsidiary of Moving Chronicles, so while everyone else was downsizing, we were scaling our business, so we expanded and we diversified, and we find more ways of being creative. But I think above all else, they say a client is like a mistress. If you don't give her attention, she's going to look for it elsewhere, So, we made it a point that, we're going to stay true to our clients despite the lockdown. We're going to engage with our clients, add value to our clients. That's the most important aspect of any business, Some people say it's the employees and some say it's the clients. What's the point of having a lot of employees if you don't have any clients, So I think it was very important that, to sustain the relationships that we've built over time, sustain the relationships. And, at times like this, we had an opportunity to even help businesses and don't charge them because we understand the solutions. For instance, we had this instance where we had to relocate. We had to help a pensioner relocate, and the pensioner didn't have money. They were only going to pay us 3 months down the line after they've received proceedings from selling the property, So you then have what you call ubuntu, understanding the person's situation, and then just adapting and helping the client, because, I love money and business is about money, but sometimes you need to bring Ubuntu to the table, helping people out, it's way more important than the money itself, So, I think one of the ways we've helped is just diversifying, look at what we need to do, look at the trends, A lot of people say education is not important, but they fail to understand that you'll never be employed if you don't have a certain degree for a certain occupation, So we always have to make sure we monitor the trends, ask ourselves where we're going to go, where the business is going, where the future is going. And another thing I want to also emphasize is, before I go into any other business, I look at the industry itself,
Okay.
It has to be very capital intensive, If it's capital intensive, it means you're not going to have a lot of competitors. One of the most struggling businesses is raising capital. So if you are an advantage of having capital, already you've raised the bar, Second to that, you want to go into an industry where it requires human capital. Not everyone has human capital, and, these are your threat of entry when you look at an industry, So I mean, expanding, you always look at the industry, what value can you add into that industry? You know, like for instance, I always tell people, I can go into any industry and I'll make a killing, you know, not because I'm clever, because I know the value I bring onto the table. And of course, I need great minds like Monet. If Monet and I were to go into a technological company, I know he has the tech mind, I know I've got the business mind. So collaborating together will create something massive, you know. So it has a lot to do with just adapting, be flexible, you know. I mean, another very good example is Nokia. You know, when the CEO had the last, what's this thing, the presentation, I think his closing remarks were, we never saw it coming, you know. So you always need to make sure that you are 2 steps ahead of your competition. Otherwise, you won't see it coming. You know, I hope I've done justice to your answer.
That is such a, I like that that you brought that to attention, that you need to always be 2 steps ahead. I see that Monet has been agreeing and nodding to saying that's right. I think it's very profound. The analogy you brought with Nokia, you know, I think a lot of as clients or customers, we never thought that it will get out of the industry or out of business. You know, we always thought it will be there, especially, you know, when you had the 3310. Back then, it was like the biggest phone.
It was the iPhone. It was the iPhone.
It was the,
Yeah,
it was essentially the
Absolutely.
iPhone. Yes, it was the iPhone of the early 2000s. Yeah, so it was a very, very great phone. And I mean, it lasted, when you look at the phone back then, the battery lasted and it had everything you needed at that moment in time. But I guess, like you mentioned, that the CEO or the team itself, they never thought that a different brand would come and take them off the market. So I like how you always say that always have human capital in the industry that you're in. And you also mentioned Ubuntu. I think it boils down back to Maneo's African narrative. And that is our African narrative, to have Ubuntu, especially in the business, because you then treat your customers with kindness, with care, and they'll always come back to you, you know. And I think I like how you also mentioned that when everybody was downscaling, you guys decided to expand, and how you then decided to expand brought a different approach to how you do business and how your clients perceive you. So that is a very great way of bringing the changes, and the adapt and expand approach is very important. Even in psychology, we always say that in life, you either swim or you adapt. And it's very important to be able to be mindful of adapting, especially in a crisis. I want us to also look at, I think you've just touched on this, Dr. Zandido, but how can you tell if the opportunities that you have spotted can be sustained beyond the crisis? You know, when you spoke about last year that when you wanted to expand on the business rather than just downscaling as everyone, how did you know that this will sustain you beyond the level 5, level 4, up until being level 1 in around September, October? That happened. Did you envision it like that? I will bring this to you, and then Maneo can add to his narrative.
Thank you so much. First of all, you know, if you know, I'm a visionary. I'm future. You know, I just, everything I do, you know, if it's not going to matter within the next 5 or 10 years, then I don't do it at all. You know, that's the starting point. That's the base. You know, so, and then you have to have the mindset, you know, to actually see how it's going to happen. You know, as you can see, I've got Einstein there. I rely a lot on my imagination. You know, so sustainability is looking at the industry itself. Will this industry be in existence 20 years, 30 years down the line? Will people still need this product 20, 30 years down the line? If the answer is yes to those questions, then, I mean, you've got high chances of being sustainable. But then again, you know, there are a lot of unforeseen circumstances. We don't know what's going to happen 2 years down the line. The one thing COVID taught us is contingency plans never work. because you're planning against the unknown. Nobody knew that COVID was going to happen. So I've conditioned and I've engraved that in my mind, contingency plans that work. So the first thing first is asking yourself that question. If you're creating a product, will people buy this product 10, 20 years from now? If the answer is no, that business is not sustainable, right? If the answer is yes to all those three questions, you've got high chances of being sustainable. But then again, it all boils down to the entrepreneur himself, right? Because your business is only successful as the entrepreneur. It's pointless. You can't be unsuccessful and have a business that's successful. You get it?
That's true.
Everything boils down to the entrepreneur himself. I never understood the term that your health is your wealth until COVID happened. So it's very important to always look after yourself, because if you're in a good space of mind, mentally, physically, emotionally, you ought to perform very well, right? But if you don't take care of those three quadrants, you're setting up yourself for failure.
Correct.
Again, just to reiterate, sustainability, if your product can operate beyond a lifespan of 10 to 20 years, then you've got high chances of being sustainable in that business. But if you're uncertain of your answers, then that clouds your judgments in terms of, will your business be sustainable, yes or no? I don't know. That's it.
I like that. Is your business or your product, your service, is it sustainable from the period of 10 to 20 years? I think that's a good approach. To anyone who wants to start a business, or anyone who is within a business, an entrepreneur or a business service or product, it's a good question to ask. And Mr. Maneo, did you see beyond 10 years when you got into the business, when you innovated it?
Wow, this guy makes it difficult to give an answer.
Correct.
But what I'll do is I'll build up on what she said. If your business idea won't be sustainable in the next 5, 10, 15 years, then you're wasting your time, you're wasting resources, right? But then it goes back to entrepreneurship. Is it a lifestyle? Am I creating a business because it's an in thing now? I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an influencer. Being an entrepreneur, there's a couple of things that you need to have. You need to have the mindset, right? Entrepreneurial mindset. But there's also competencies that you need as an entrepreneur. And those things are learned and those things are taught, right? So it means get the mindset right.
Okay.
And when you start looking at the competence of being an entrepreneur, and I'll mention it, right? You need to have the startup competencies, right? How do I take this idea that I have and I actually create vision in it, right? And I was quite fortunate during COVID to actually meet some of the greatest minds in South Africa. People like Andre Young, who introduced me to the exponential organizations community, And when I started reading and learning, I realized that when COVID came, it was not only about spotting opportunities, it was also about spotting potential, right? And for you to spot that potential, you need to take your idea and you need to really go through a process of inquiry, right? Question your innovation, question your vision. This vision that I'm creating, where is it going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And I'll go back to the human capital that Dr. Zandi spoke about, right? If you don't have that human capital, you're going to fail and it's going to discourage you, right? But it's a good thing that you have people who are quite interested in developing entrepreneurs and who are there to coach you, mentor you, and teach you. And if you look at the competencies that you need as an entrepreneur, it's not only about creating vision, you need to generate different alternatives to this idea that you've just developed, right? Because if you don't, somebody else is going to reinvent it and they are going to be your competitor. sustainability is very important. And I think what young entrepreneurs then don't realize is that you need a lot of financial acumen. Unfortunately, you need to understand the numbers. I'm not a financial person, hands down. I'm bad with finances. But then now it goes to the next point that I want to add onto what Dr. Zandi said, which is now, how do you then create a network of people who are going to support this idea that you have? And I know that as an entrepreneur, it's mostly difficult to go out and share your ideas with people, because you also run the risk of people stealing your ideas. But then you now need to create formalized structures like finding a coach, right? Find somebody to coach you. Find your Mufasa. If you believe that you are a Simba, you need to have a Mufasa who's going to guide you, somebody who's your sound box. You go, this is the idea. This is how I think it's going to work. And the person needs to be very honest with you. This would work. This won't work, right? You are the entrepreneur. You've got the mindset. You are building your capacity. We need to pack up. We need to pack up. We can't be entrepreneurs by looking good, by coming up with ideas. We need to pack up here. You need to know your story. And back to what Dr. Zandi was saying, if you want to go into an industry, become a subject matter in that industry, right? So that you know all the pros and cons. Where is this industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine, I think a couple of months back, and he was telling me that he wants to go into farming. And I was asking him all the nice questions that you would want to ask an entrepreneur. So what's the sustainability, and boom, COVID happened just after he started. And he lost all his livestock because he couldn't sell. He was doing pigs, right? He didn't think ahead, and he didn't listen to people when they gave him advice. He came back, he said to me, you sort of told me, I wanted you to invest, you didn't. I invested during COVID because I saw an opportunity that after this pandemic, there's going to be a demand. And I told him, and I said to him, sometimes don't rush to wear the title entrepreneur. Sometimes go and pack up, build your acumen, and then come back and try this entrepreneurship, right? And the packing for the students who are in university, it is the knowledge that you need to get from your course, right? Make sure that you pick up and you learn a skill on how to solve problems, so that when you go outside of the university, you know your story, right? When you partner with people, you know exactly what are you partnering on and what is the problem that you're going to address. And the last point around the opportunities, just on the side of the potential, right? Potential is a difficult thing to measure, right? Then it says to you, you need to do your market research, right? I'm not in marketing, but I had to actually diversify my thinking and start thinking like a marketing specialist, to try and look and scan the environment and understand exactly what is the demand in the environment, and try and put together a business model that would be sustainable. And I think knowledge is very critical. It's very important. And there's no way of getting the knowledge than going the education route,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. A
Sorry,
mouthful.
I just want to add something to what Monet just said. He mentioned that, when you have a business idea, networking, share your idea with people, You need to understand, that's a very great concept. But now I just want to rely this message on to the listeners, because I believe there's a lot of university students that are listening and the likes. Sometimes it's very important to share your idea, and you're going to get a lot of feedback and people are going to criticize your idea. I think the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make is taking criticism to heart. One thing that you don't want to do, a lot of people are going to, they're not going to see your idea the way that you see it. So it's okay if they criticize it and say it's not going to work. Nah, you're just dreaming and stuff. It's okay. Everyone is going to say that. Everyone has something to say, right? Correct. But my point is, don't take everyone's advice to heart. because then once you do that, you're creating room for self-doubt. If Monet says this idea, if Monet says this idea is not going to work, you're going to start doubting the idea. So if Monet say, no, man, this business idea is whack, it's fine. Just brush it off. Don't take it to heart. Just move on to the next idea. Only take what's going to be conducive to your productivity. That's all I wanted to share.
I think what Dr. Zandile is referring to is the conversation that you guys had last week, I think, being resilient. Right?
Absolutely.
Build resiliency, don't allow arrows to penetrate you. Let them bounce off. Trust me, we all get criticism, but you build a thick skin, and I think the guys around me, they call it skin in the game, right? You've got to have skin in the game. And you know that people are going to criticize you. Not only people around you, you go to people and you want to pitch your idea to say, I can deliver this service, right? And especially for those who are going to leave varsity and want to start business, people are going to start asking you, where are your credentials? This thing won't work, man, right? Build resilience and be confident on the ideas that you generate, and have your skin and soul in the game. And I think you should be fine.
Absolutely. I concur.
A lot has been said. I feel like we're going to need a part 2 of this conversation because there's so much to be said. But what I'm taking from this is mindset is important. Being resilient is important. And I also took out that do not also discredit going to university and getting that education, because it also helps you form a sense of discipline at the end of the day. So it's important for entrepreneurs to be mindful of this, receiving education, and don't also allow everybody's feedback to weigh you down, because people might not like your idea. It doesn't mean it's not great, but it's also understanding the vision that you have for yourself and the product or the service that you're going to be offering. But I would like to end off with what Monet said. I like that metaphor you brought up of a Mufasa having such resources to play. As a coach, I'm going to use that. I'll copyright that for you, that I'm the Mufasa and facilitate that process. So thank you for that. I'd like just to remind our viewers that you can always comment or send us your questions for our guests. And we have a few comments. So from Nosi, she is basically saying that collaboration is important and opportunities will come, which I think is very important. And you gentlemen have spoken about that. We have Tobekani, and Tobekani mentions that create a narrative that focuses on solving issues. So I think this is boiling down to what Monet was saying. That is very important. And he also has a question to say, is the government pro-entrepreneurs in terms of providing necessary support? And this goes to Zandi. I think you mentioned something about government, but yeah, this is what Tobek Dine is asking. Is the government pro-entrepreneurs in terms of providing necessary support?
I'm very neutral when it comes to that. And I say that because, there are certain agencies that are out there that do provide pedagogical support more than they provide financial support, So if we break down the two quadrants and say, are there government entities that provide pedagogical support? Yes, they are. Are there government agencies that provide finance? To a certain extent, they do, because just take it back to a research I recently done. I interviewed 20 entrepreneurs, and all of them received a minimum of 2 million rand from the IDC, from the DMR. So to a certain extent, government is helping, but I don't know, maybe you need to be connected with the right individual to access that support. I have no idea. But to answer the question, the state agencies are there. They are providing the necessary support. It's just a matter of who's receiving it, but the agencies are there to answer that question.
Okay. I think even last week, when we spoke about the resilience, I did mention that there are a lot of agencies that do provide support, financial support to entrepreneurs. And like you say, it depends also, maybe the government also weighs to how sustainable is your business. You know, we need to also be mindful of that. But it's always continually knocking on the door, and one door is not enough. Unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, you always have to have that resilience to wanting to knock to other doors. Following up, I think let's get into the marketing. Moneo spoke about that he's not a marketer, but he had to shift his mindset to talk about to start marketing and understanding how to market his business. How can entrepreneurs just retain their clientele or market in these difficult times? Because it's very challenging to market. And I think we never talk about the marketing aspect of the business or as an entrepreneur, you know, sometimes we don't have these marketing skills, but how do we encourage ourselves to, like Moneo said, that he had to just build that sense of, I'm not a marketer, but how do I make sure that I market the business? So maybe I can start with you on that one, Moneo, if you could just share with us.
Well, you putting me on the spot there, because Doc said a client is like a mistress, right? And I'm gonna steal that, and I'm gonna say a client is like a mistress. Is right. If you don't keep them happy, they'll leave, right? And I think when you package your solutions, maybe it goes back to the learnings or the teachings of business canvas models. You know,
Okay.
what are the pains that the client is feeling, and what are the gains that your solution brings to the pains that the client is feeling, right? And I think it's always the basics, right? And those basics, they need to be reinvented as the client's problems change. You need to reinvent. You know what I mean? I mean, if I give you a simple example with Kodak, which is an example that a lot of people will tell you about, is that Kodak are out of business because they allowed the mistress to go and taste digital cameras. And the mistress was gone forever. They didn't keep the mistress happy. So it means you need to continuously reinvent your business model. I mean, there's a whole new study around business model innovations, you know, and I think I was quite fortunate that as I was side hustling at work, I was involved in a process where we were developing content for helping leaders on how they can build acumen. And I came across the concept of business model innovation, and I got hooked. And while I was hooked, I started speaking to people like Andre Young, Vuyo Jack, you know, back to my Mufasas. You know, I went to my Mufasas and I said to them, "Hey, gentlemen, Pride Rock is on fire. We need to put out the fire. How do we do it?" And all the time when I spoke to these gentlemen, they always tell me, "It's within you. You just need to think, and you just need to make sure that you're doing the right thing." You know, and I think one of the key things that entrepreneurs need to learn is to say, you can keep your clients by doing the right thing, you know, the ethics of entrepreneurship. You can keep your client without exaggerating your sales, without overpricing them or underpricing to try and get a business to be competitive, you know, and as well as keeping an eye on your competitors. You know, what are they doing? Why is my mistress leaving and going there? What is it that could force my mistress to leave and go there? You know, if it means I have to go and buy a shirt like Dog, I'll go and buy it to make sure that my mistress doesn't go, you know. And even better, maybe I'll go and buy a Gucci one, you know, and impress the mistress. But what I'm trying to say is clients are very critical, you know, especially to a business. Having a business that doesn't have clients, it's depressing. Trust me. Yes. When I started, I sent hundreds of thousands of emails. You know, I'm quite energetic. I would sit every day and tell myself, in a day, I am going to talk to at least 40 people, right? And that's another skill that young people need, the ability to communicate. And as you send those millions of emails, you get responses, you get disappointed. some people won't even respond, right? So it goes to business development. How do you refine your skills? And education, critical.
How do you refine your skills? That is so profound. Wow. Yes, Dr. Zandi, you can share. And then after I'm going to read the comments. Been great comments coming through.
Perfect. Again, just to reiterate, a client is like a mistress. If you don't give her attention, she's going to get it somewhere else. It's very important. So how do you give a client attention? First of all, you need to put your degrees aside and hustle like a dropout. You can go to any shopping center, you'll find F&B, Netbank, Virgin Active selling on the streets. That's right? True. They're trying to sign clients up. And then you get someone who has a bachelor's degree in science or whatever the case is and say, I know I can't be selling things in the street. No, door-to-door sales. That's rule number one, And when you're doing door-to-door sales, you need to have the same enthusiasm on door one as door number 99. So you keep the enthusiasm the same. Consistency is key, So that's the point number one, door to door, and put your degrees aside, go sell in the street. And then another thing, we're in the 21st century, so you need to have a corporate identity. For instance, if I'm looking to buy something from Monet, I'm not going to remember Monet's name, but I might remember his company. And then I'm going to go to Google. Boom. If nothing comes up, I'm not going to take him serious because he doesn't have a corporate identity, So you need to make sure that you have a corporate identity that serves as a reference between you and your client, So that's your websites, that's your perfect logo, perfect URL, business cards, it plays key. Business cards are very important, And also, there's a saying that says there's never free coffee, Sometimes I take liberty to invite my clients out for coffee. Coffee is only going to cost me, $70 for two? But can you imagine the magnitude of the conversation that I'm going to have over that cup of coffee? And you need to make sure you go the extra mile, that you're not only interested in the client's financial support, but you also need to show interest in their well-being. How's your business? Ask the questions. How's the family? Try and get involved and make sure that you are interested in the client's well-being more than you are in the client's money. And then it's very important as well. Once you have corporate identity, that's what you call Google Ads. You create Google Ads because no one is going to come looking for Monet in his office. People are going to open the laptop whenever they need something. All right. So if you don't have Google Ads already, you're behind, right? So you need to make sure that you're always 2 steps ahead. Have a great corporate identity and pay special attention to all your clients. Invite them from time to time, take them for a game of golf, invite them for a cup of coffee. A lot of people, for instance, I just want to say this, when it comes to sales, a lot of people focus on the exchange part, where you deliver the service, you retain the money, and that's it. A lot of small businesses never ever follow up. It's rare, for instance, let's say I do a lot of office relocations and home removals. Sometimes I'll surprise a client a month after I've transferred them to the new property. Just give them a call, a courtesy call. Good day, ma'am. How are you? I'm well, thanks. How are you settling in your new home? Boom, you've already captured that client's attention. She'll never forget you. Even if she needs to move again, she'll be like, what, Zandisile went the extra mile by calling me a month after we have done the exchange in terms of the service and the rand, So always make sure that you follow up with your clients, And Monet, you mentioned something about sending 1 million emails. It's a very good strategy, but you don't know if you're pushing the client away. I, for once, I don't want 7 emails from one person because it's going to start boring and, But then I believe if you structure the first email in the sense that you want to capture the value, that should speak for itself, right? So just to reiterate as well, treat your client with respect, be more involved in the client's well-being as well. Be involved in the client's business. I've had situations where I always refer my client. If I know someone selling a product and I know someone who wants the product my client sell, I'll always refer, and I don't ask anything for that because your well-being is my priority as well. If you're successful, I'm also going to be successful. There's plenty for everyone in this world. There's not a short supply of money. There's a lot of money for everyone in this world. You just have to find it. That's all.
Mahalia, can I jump in on the last point?
I'm going to give you 2 minutes.
Okay. This is becoming very interesting.
I know.
Doc is talking about referrals, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's about time as young, Black, white, Indian, as the rainbow nation of entrepreneurs to create a culture of entrepreneurship. And you'd be asking yourself, what is he talking about culture? We need to give away the individualistic approach and start thinking about group success. If me and Dr. Zandi succeed, I've succeeded. If I recommend somebody right now to Dr. Zandi Sile, he's gonna definitely refer back to me as well when he finds somebody who needs my services.
Correct.
So group mentality, a culture of entrepreneurs. And I think maybe that's how the Jews are doing it. They are one of the smallest populations in the world, yet the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest group of people that you can ever find. Why? Culture. You infuse culture. And maybe when talking to culture, in the last 60 seconds, I think we also need to bring to the conversation the concept of spirituality into entrepreneurship, not just about the money, right? And when I'm talking about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about creating that Ubuntu, right? It is based on spirituality of saying, let us all take care of each other. Let's look out for each other, right? And when you build a culture of entrepreneurship, right, then it means we start looking at each other and say, how do we create networks that would make all of us successful in our own individual capacities?
Okay, gentlemen, I have one question. I find it very profound. So I just want for 30 seconds each to answer it. So it's from Tepo, and Tepo is asking, how do we ensure that we prepare students for the market after their education? Since you've spoken about education a lot, and then we're going to close. Yeah.
Do you want to go, Monet, or should I go?
Go, Doc.
Okay. I'll take this. I'll make a very good example. I remember when I was undergrad, while studying, I was also hustling, A big mistake students make, especially in entrepreneurship, is they tend to wait first to obtain the qualification. And then they start imagining themselves as entrepreneurs. You need to understand that entrepreneurship is a very different or dynamic environment. There's no set rules for entrepreneurs, and you just need to go along as the time goes by. So I think what is very important to prepare the students is don't wait until you obtain the qualifications to do what it is that you want to do, right? So start where you are with what you have. For instance, when I was undergrad, there were people selling knickknacks for R1. That's enterprising, And they didn't have to wait first to obtain the qualification. I remember when I was second year, I had a car wash on campus. So I had classes from Monday to Thursday. Fridays, I had no classes. So I used Fridays to wash cars, and people looked at me and thought I was crazy. What is this guy doing washing cars on campus? But they didn't see the vision, So you need to start where you are with what you have. And I think entrepreneurs should always avoid the wishful thinking that, I need R1 million to start this idea. I need all of this. You don't have to get all your ducks in a row before you start, Just start where you are with what you have and just go along with enthusiasm.
And run with it.
Yeah.
Dr. Zandi, thank you so much for that answer. And now I would love to hear your input, but time is not on our side. I would request Walter Sisulu to give us 15 minutes, but the time is up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this conversation. It was very important. This is such an important topic. And we'll have a discussion offline, still being able to answer questions. But with that being said, thank you to Walter Sisulu University for giving us the opportunity. Thank you, gentlemen, for giving us your time, being here, sharing your wisdom with us. This has been insightful. As an entrepreneur, I've learned. Just one line with closing, please.
Mahalia, thank you so much for hosting us. And maybe just in closing, to add to that one last question, right? I would say universities, government needs to make it a priority to make sure that entrepreneurship is a compulsory subject. It starts there.
Okay.
Start from schooling, teach them entrepreneurship, and they will leave the education system prepared. Right now, we're preparing a group of 7. Let's prepare Simba.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Better. Dr. Zandi, your closing statement for us, advice, guidance.
I think what I'd like to leave or share with you guys before we leave is, being successful is not a matter of skill or anything else. It has a lot to do with your mindset and attitude. I know a lot of people have great skill but are unsuccessful today because they've got a stinking attitude. So it has a lot to do with attitude and taking initiative in whatever it is that you're doing. So going forward, I wish people to be cognitive of the fact that mindset is what's going to make you successful more than the skill, because once you have that mindset, again, it brings us back to what we were talking about, resilient. If you've got the mindset to have a mind of a bulletproof and block out any negativity, you're bound to succeed, So just keep knocking, keep banging, keep your head down, don't listen to haters, and just keep working, keep moving.
And just like that, we are calling it a wrap for tonight's talk, finding a opportunity in crisis. It has been it's been amazing. I myself, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as a facilitator, I've learned a lot. I've taken down my notes, and thank you so much for this opportunity to Walter Sisulu again. And we will see you guys next week with a different topic, with different guests. But thank you so much to everybody that watched the show, that commented, that asked questions. Have a good evening. My name is Mahalia Malema, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Doc, we must talk.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're still live, I think. I'm trying to leave.
Okay, just end the live session and then Simba and I can continue our discussion.
Okay.